I'm going to give you all the tips that I know as a level 91 character approaching the actual endgame. And I'm going to go in depth into certain tips and mistakes that I think you should definitely avoid, as well as some other big tips and tricks that you can apply to your character even right now. Let's get into it. What's up, World Distributor? Back in with another video, and we're checking out all things Diablo 4. Okay, so I'm going to go into the main tips, which is basically the gearing. There's a lot of stuff around gearing, and a lot of confusion that I've noticed, even from people typing in my clan, as well as other people just typing in general, just trying to figure out what's going on with the actual gearing system and the trait system. Now, there's a lot of stuff with the sacred legendaries, as well as the higher up legendaries, like the ancestral and just the regular legendary. People are confusing basically the roles at the very bottom. So as you can see at the bottom of this legendary right here, we have 25%, 20 to 30% on this role here. And as well as this one is 1053, basically 19 to 1021. And another example here from the aspects, I have one here that is a shield barrier. One that's here that's a sacred legendary. Now this was able to roll between 1800 and 3700. However, if you get a higher level one, which is over here, if you get an ancestral one, you see that it can roll from 2800 to 5742. So these do apply at the higher levels. Now, a bunch of confusion here is that when you take it off and you apply it to an amulet, or you apply it to a weapon, a lot of times this, as you can see here, amulet, the power is increased by 50%. So a lot of people do get that confused there when they apply it to something else and like, well, why is the roll changed? Why is it different? Why is it less? The reason being is because sometimes the power might have been on an amulet. So for here, for example, it says you deal 47% increased damage. This had a roll between 38 and 53. However, if you put this on a different piece or you try to apply it to a different section, you'll see here, I have the piece in here somewhere, that you only apply a 35% more damage to the immobilizer stun. But because I put this on my amulet, it increased the power by 50%. Therefore, I do 47% more damage to immobilize and stunned enemies. So you need to watch out for that. Definitely want to watch out which legendaries are you're applying where and how you're applying them. I also will be wary if you do get a perfect roll like this, 35%, don't use this. Unless this is your only roll, don't really use this. You want to save this for better gear. You're going to be constantly getting new gear, and after you approach that point when you get new gearing stuff, you're constantly going to be fighting new monsters and higher level monsters. You're going to be upgrading, and you want to keep your gear current. Which leads me on to my next tip, and that is that the fact that gear about level 70 is about the best you're going to get. So if you do get a weapon, like for example here, that's 795, or like my offhand, that's 811, I got these at level 70, or around level 70, right before 80. I have yet to find anything better, basically the traits that I'm looking for, and it's really, really hard to find weapons that are 800. As you'll see here, 788, we have a 757, and these are the drops that I'm getting at level 90. As you can see, level requirement is level 90, even 91 here. This was 754, 762, 765, and so on. So my go-to is if you are power farming, right? A lot of people that power farm XP right now, a lot of people that are trying to push these higher levels, pushing up to, you know, level 100 like I am myself, we're not really vendoring anymore. I'm not really vendoring anymore. I'm just trying to power level. So a lot of times I'll just take the gear and drop it on the floor. And even if it's ancestral, I don't really need it. As you see, I have tons of gold. So I'll just go ahead and drop it out of my gear if I don't think that the gear is any good. Now, since I'm in town here, I'm going to go ahead and sell. However, if I'm just in dungeons farming, you can drop these. But my point is that if you do get gear, what you should do at the very least when you are in dungeons and when you are in the dungeon itself, and you are just power farming, if you are, you should at least look through the gear. If you're not going to sell it, if you're not going to take it back, you should at least pick it up and look through it, because this gear could be build defining for a very, very long time. You might never see an 800 plus weapon that will completely change the way your build works, and at least gives you a ton of bonus damage. As you see here, we have a 1300 DPS on this 811. Now, granted, it's been upgraded 5 times. However, if I were to take one of these, for example, and upgrade them 5 times, it's not going to equal that amount of power. It's going to be a lot. As you see, the damage loss here is minus 624. Now, this is even with a rare staff. It's calculating in both of our weapons here, which is the main hand and the offhand. And so you'll see still here, we are losing a ton of DPS, even when we get kind of close at this 788. It seems like 800 plus has that item level spike where you get a ton of power increase. So I would look for weapons that are 800 plus. Try to look for your rolls there, which leads me on to my next point. And my next point is that if you are rolling for gear, you really shouldn't be doing it on these low item level 700s. And if you do go roll, and we'll head over there now really quickly, if you do decide to roll your gear, I would recommend only going at least to 1,000,000 on this enchant. So I wouldn't spend any more than that, especially if it's not item level 800. If it is an item level 800, go crazy. Spend your 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 million if you really want to. Gold does come quickly. However, when you are approaching these later levels, when you are approaching like 91 or 100 even, you're probably not going to be farming at the same rate as you were. And you're really going to miss that gold. So do be wary on when you're rolling gear, what you're rolling for. It seems like an average of 15 to 30 million to get any trait that you really want, or to see all the traits that you really want. Which leads me on to my next tip here. A lot of this stuff is called a bucket damage. Now, tons of people have gone over the bucket damage. I'm sure you've heard it a ton of times. However, I want to go over it very briefly because people might not know about it, and it's just kind of nice and useful tips here. So we'll look at an item here that has two different bucket, or same bucket damage here, which I believe is cold damage and regular damage. I think these are in the same bucket. However, I haven't really decided to switch these out yet because it's just kind of a really good piece, and it does decent damage here. But when these two things are applied together, it'll be 16 and 13%, or 16 of 13%. It's not additive, or it won't be 29%. It's going to be multiplicative. And you don't want multiplicative, you want additive. So for example, my, at least I think, my rings and jewelry are really, really, really good in my opinion. I have vulnerable damage here, critical strike damage here, cold damage, and damage to frozen. These are all in different buckets. Vulnerable damage has its own bucket, so it's not conflicting with cold damage. Critical strike damage, of course, has its own bucket, and then damage 2 has its own bucket as well. Also, when we look at this one, again, lucky hit chance, cold damage, and damage to frozen, and vulnerable damage, that is 3 different buckets, making it additive, which is really, really nice. That's what you want on gear pieces. You want the additive gear. You do not want damage to, yada, yada, yada. So you'll see that a lot of times on like different gear. Like this one, damage to stun enemies, damage to close, damage to distance. You do not want this. This is a terrible roll. This is way too much stuff in the same bucket. It's 18% of 20% of 23%. It's really not that much. If you take 18% of 20%, it's around 23-ish%. It's not a lot as you see there. It's not additive like as you see here, and so you really want to go for that additive bonus. Now seemingly frost skill damage and cold damage are on the same thing, which also brings me to my next point, because a lot of people are having or at least a hard time, and myself as well, having a hard time understanding what cold and frost damage and all this skill damage here is. So if you look here on this section here with Blizzard, we see Mastery at the top here, we see Mastery, and then we see Frost. That means that this is a Frost ability. That means when we do Frost skill damage, this is increasing the Frost skill damage. Now when you look at the bottom here, you'll see cold damage, which means that we're doing cold damage with this ability as well as frost damage. So you see that there some abilities, I think Druid has one. I don't think for example here, this is shock damage and then lightning damage. So it's both, but it doesn't apply to the other. So it increases the shock damage, but it won't increase the lightning damage. Or at least if an ability is shock damage and not lightning damage, then it's only going to increase the shock damage of it. But as you see here, we have fire is pyromancy and fire damage. We have here again frost, which is cold damage. I think Druid has a few different ones where shock and lightning are in 2 different traits here. So that's how you could see which is doing which and what is applying to your character, as well as all these different traits here that are applying overall to the damage modifiers. Now other than that, I do have a few tips for the Hell Tide, which I don't believe, we do have one up right now. We have one up. You can look here right in the middle to see how much time there is. However, there is a website called helltides.com, and this one has gotten really, really good lately. It does showcase all the events in the Hell Tide. It also showcases all the mystery chest locations. However, people are doing a community effort, and it's even showing the active mystery chests, because not every mystery chest is active up, and a lot of them change with each half hour, and they kind of coordinate around the map. And so what people will do is they've been able to kind of, on this website, they've been able to community source it and showcase the active chests, and they also showcase when the chests will respawn. Really great to have. I love the website for what it does. It has incredible work there, and honestly, I really appreciate this one. I'm going to include a link down below so you guys can use it. It's really, really good for Helltide farming, and you guys should be farming Helltides. In fact, that's my last little tip here, is going into these kind of ingredients here. You'll see I have a ton here for the Helltides, 472 Forgotten Souls. This is a lot. I've seen people with like 5 and 10 that have been farming, so you really want to keep up with this stuff, and you will get a ton of these materials. My last little tip here for the kind of end game farmers that really want to work on their gear, really want to work on having the mats all set up and everything that with a stat priority. What I would do is sell all of this other stuff and then disenchant or salvage your legendaries. Legendaries give a lot of mats. They give the really good mats here. I believe they give, these right here. You really want to focus on getting these mats because I was quite low until I started salvaging my legendaries. So every legendary that I get that I don't want, I go ahead and salvage. Other than that, that's kind of a lot of the tips that I figured out from hitting this max level, or at least getting close to max level, and kind of trying to save you guys some time with stat priorities, with gold, and things of that nature. I'll try to cover more in depth on another video, but I hope I showcased enough for this one. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, and until the next one, deuces.